Hey, this is Tyler with Dieselgeek. Today's video covers the installation of our heavy-duty aluminum skid plate on this 2014 Jetta Sportwagen TDI. This product fits all Mark V Volkswagen vehicles, regardless of body style, and all Mark VI Jetta Sportwagen and Golf vehicles. It does not fit the 2011 and newer Mark VI Jetta sedan. We're shooting this on a full rise 2-post lift. You don't need a lift to do this, but you will need to get the vehicle or the front of the vehicle up on jacks and stands so that you have the ability to work safely underneath the front of it. But without further ado, let's go over the parts and get started. All right, so these are the tools that you need to install the Mark V and Mark VI Panzer skid plate. You're going to be working underneath the car, so you'll need a couple of lights. You need some way to get underneath the car. Jack and stands is great. You can actually do this on a set of service ramps. You don't have to take the wheels or the fender liners off. You're going to need a torque wrench. Lowest torque is about 15 foot-pounds, highest torque is about 45 foot-pounds. You will need two 19mm box end wrenches. You'll need a 13, 16, and 17mm socket that you can put on a wobble adapter. It's nice to have two relatively long 3/8 drive extensions. You'll need a pair of pliers. You'll need a 1/2-inch drive, 18mm socket, and 1/2-inch drive ratchet, of course, to get a couple of pretty tight bolts. You need a 30mm deep socket. You need to be able to remove the factory belly pan, which is held on by T25 and T30 Torx bits. 3/8 drive ratchet. If you have a small impact, that's great. If you don't worry about it. You can do it by hand. And then the last piece of the puzzle is you need some way to make two little trims in the factory belly pan, provided you still have the factory belly pan and you're planning on installing it along with the Panzer plate. You can do it with a razor blade. It's pushing the limits. A small saw works, or probably the nicest tool, but not everybody has one, is a hot knife. But that's about it. So these plates are manufactured with the contact plastic just to keep them nice and pretty. So you'll want to peel this off before putting this on your car. But it comes off pretty easily. All right, so first item in the kit is our heavy-duty aluminum skid plate. This is laser cut 5052 aluminum and 3/16" stick. You lose very little in the way of ground clearance, nothing in the form of aerodynamics, just a super elegant solution. It'll really take a beating. Next we have our two stainless steel mounting brackets, also very robust. This is the right bracket, this is the left bracket. They sweep forward and the C-shaped channel faces inward. And here we have our hardware kit. So we have two stainless steel studs for the rear mounting positions, two bolts, washers, and nuts for the front brackets. We have 3 hexagonal rib nuts, 3 flange nuts, 3 thin gold spacer washers, our M10 bolts here. We have 4 bevel nuts, 2 flat nuts, and 3 silver M10 washers. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is prepare our forward mounting brackets. So what we'll do So we'll just drop the bolt and washer into the forward lower holes here. And then we'll just tighten them against each other with 2 wrenches like that. Just kind of do it like you're using scissors. And now we can go and get underneath the car. Okay, so next step's taking off the belly pan. Oh, looks like this is falling down. We can go ahead and tuck that back up right quick. All right, so after the belly pan's removed, we're gonna remove these 2 18mm headed bolts at the front of the subframe. We've put a pink dot on them so that they stand out for you. These guys are pretty tight. Okay, so once you have those front subframe bolts out, what you need to do is prepare the studs like this. Basically just thread the flat nut on and then thread the bevel nut on, cone up. And then just tighten them against each other by hand. And that way you can thread this in to the board that you removed the 18mm headed bolts from without it spinning around on you. So we'll just thread these studs in, and you put a finger up here and you just keep threading them on in. Oh. Until you can just barely feel the top of that stud poking through. And then we'll spin that bevel nut off, bring that one, that 30mm flat nut up, and we'll torque to 44, that's 44 foot-pounds. Then go an additional 90 degrees. And now we'll repeat that same process on the other side. So now it's time to install the forward mounting brackets. I'm going to start on the right side of the car. I've applied a pea-sized amount of grease to each of our 3 M10 cap screws. And let's get under the car with one of the spacer washers and one of the hex body rib nuts. Okay, so now we're going to reach up, and on all these cars there's going to be a healthy amount of body wax, and so we want to grab just a little bit of body wax in 2 locations and put it on this thin spacer washer so that it'll stick. And then we're going to take the spacer washer and we're going to put it up on this stud right there. And take it. And we'll push it up just real hard to squish that wax, and it'll stay up there on its own. And then we'll take that hex body rib nut and we'll find this hexagonal hole in the frame rail, and we'll do the same thing. And usually there's enough body wax just hanging out there. We can just push that up hard and it'll stick. And we're doing this with the fender liner in the way, but it's actually kind of nice because when we take our mounting bracket and maneuver it into position, that fender liner that's in the way will just hold it up there. And that way you don't have to worry about it falling off. All right, so now that we have that bracket in position, we're going to take our 13mm flange nut there and start that on the stud. Just a couple turns, and then we'll take our greased cap screw, 10mm cap screw, and we have to wiggle this bracket around so we can see that hex body rib nut. And oh, almost forgot. We need to take our washer, put that on our greased 10mm cap screw, and then wiggle this around till we can see that hex body rib nut. And we'll just go ahead and start that by hand. And once both of those fasteners are started, then we can reach in here and snug up our 13. Now, this is just an M8 stud, so the torque spec on this is about 15 foot-pounds. Don't go crazy with it, or otherwise you'll break that stud out of your car. Not the end of the world if you do, but it's not what you want. And then once that guy's tight, then we can do the same for the hex cap screw, and it'll bottom out and you'll start tightening it, and you'll feel even resistance as it's mushrooming out that rib nut, and you'll just keep going along. And then once it starts getting tight, it's pretty much there, and you go just a little bit past. If you want, you can put a torque wrench on it, and the torque spec is 30, that's 30 foot-pounds. And then, once those fasteners are tight, we're going to go back and we're going to loosen them up about a turn and a half. And that seems funny, but it'll make sense later. So everything's set and everything's in there, but that forward mounting post is loose. And this speed nut here is going to interfere. So just come in with a pair of pliers, just take that off. Next, we'll move on to installing the left driver's side bracket. This one's almost identical with the following exceptions. Instead of one 8mm stud, we have two, and we actually have two hexagonal rib nut locations in the frame rail. And on some of the gasoline cars, there's a smog pump right here that has a bracket that blocks one of the holes. You'll need to notch that bracket as shown here. And finally, for all of these cars, this lower inboard bumper blade bolt is in our way. So we'll reach in from the front of the car and just back that guy up a little bit so that we have tool access. Okay, so we're going to show you how to access that lower inboard bumper blade bolt. We're going to access it through the grill, so you don't have to take the bumper cover off or anything like that. And we're going to do that through this hole right here in this radiator duct. Got the yellow pointer there. And so we're going to actually pass a socket with an extension through this hole, and then we're going to come in and we're going to loosen up this bolt, not the outboard bolt, the inboard bolt. And we're not going to take this bolt all the way out. We're just going to loosen it about 7 full turns, and that's going to give us the access we need. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we can get back underneath the car and install the driver's side bracket. All right, so thin spacer washer, body wax. Push it up onto the stud. Spacer washer, body wax. Hex body rib nut. Hex body rib nut. Bracket. And remember, once the rib nuts are set, loosen up about 1.5 turns. Okay. Oh, and the speed nut here, it's in the way. Okay, now that we have the back mounting studs installed and the forward mounting brackets installed, we can start getting this skid plate up on here. We're going to do an initial installation to get these brackets perfectly aligned first, and then we're going to take the plate back off, put the plastic belly pan back on there to keep things cleaner in the engine compartment, to keep heat in, and to stabilize these side skirts, and then we'll just button everything back up. All right, so we're just gonna hang the plate on the back studs here, and we're gonna install the 2 bevel nuts upside down so that the conical face centers the plate on the studs. Just hand tight is great. And then we'll come in and we'll align the front brackets onto the plate. We'll just start these bevel nuts by hand. You don't have to tighten them. This is why we left those brackets loose, so that we can get them wiggled around in the right spot. And so now we'll reach up with our ratchet and our extensions, and we're going to tighten up those 4 fasteners on the left side. Again, about 30 foot-pounds for the M10 bolts. And about 15 foot-pounds for those black flange nuts with the 13mm heads. Now we'll just do the same thing on the passenger side of the car. Kind of not entirely necessary, but I do kind of like to square those brackets up a little bit with the frame rails if I can. Just looks a little prettier. Okay, so now that we've got our forward mounting brackets adjusted, we'll take the plate back off and we'll go ahead and install the factory belly pan. There's really no need to install the 3 holes in the back. Really, we're just going with these T25s into the fender liners to stabilize them. Remember that the 2 forward bolts interfered, so we just left those out, but that's fine. You're gonna have some plastic overlapping the forward mounting bracket, and that's fine, but if it's overlapping this thin nut, you'll wanna just trim around that so that the plate can sit up against that thin nut all the way around. Same goes for the bevel nuts in the back. Okay, so final installation of the plate. Just get those bevel nuts started by hand. Conical side facing down. And then since we took the time to adjust those forward brackets, it just slips on there. So when you go to maintain your car, all you'll need to do is take these 4 bevel nuts off, and along with the factory belly pan. So before these ship out, we put just a drop of Loctite in these 4 bevel nuts. It's maybe not the worst idea to refresh that every once in a while. But once you've got them started, just go ahead and tighten them up. Torque spec for these guys is 44 foot-pounds. All right, and then the last step is, remember, we need to go back and tighten our bumper blade bolt. If you left that extension on there, you don't have to go back and find that bolt head again. Just go ahead and tighten that guy up to about 30 foot-pounds, and you're all set. Thanks for watching.